I wouldn't be surprised to see $1 million Bitcoin by the end of 2027.
What does it feel like to be in the US right now with this completely new wave of pro-crypto sentiment from the government, from corporations? What is going on there, Kyle?
It's a surreal thing, sitting on a Zoom call with the SEC. That was unfathomable a few months ago. And they're trying to understand, how do we protect the American consumer, but also not hinder innovation and make America the crypto capital of the world?
Are you surprised the price of Bitcoin hasn't spiked earlier?
Not really, because of the uncertainties that's been happening in the market, the tariffs and the wars and the Fed, and we're starting to see clarity coming.
Tell me about Crypto Nights. You got these companies coming on and pitching you. It's kind of high Hollywood factor.
As we evolve the financial infrastructure of the world, more and more access opens up to the 99%. And so if you care about your financial future, if you care about trying to learn how to be a better investigator, due diligence, then the show is really good to watch, because you're going to learn as you go along, and you'll learn about blockchain, you'll learn about what we should be looking at when you're identifying if something's investable or not.
10 years from now, if you do everything right, what does your life look like?
I see myself as a voice in the crypto industry, as someone who helped shape it. There's now 50 million United States citizens that hold Bitcoin, and there's only 30 million that hold gold. That's a clear signal that demand is here and the landscape environment is changing to where now it's just going to accelerate like crazy. My goal in this industry is to allow the financial future of the 99% to flourish.
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing in crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.
The world is changing. Inspiration is everywhere. It has never been so easy to connect, share, and bring people together. We're learning from others and finding the best in ourselves. Challenging our beliefs. Sharing our vulnerability. Overcoming our fears. Transforming ourselves so we can transform the world. How far can we go? This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is... This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Kyle Chassé, the crypto veteran, technology entrepreneur, and investor. You are the founder and chairman of MV Global, a crypto-focused venture studio and fund that has deployed almost $100 million into over 300 early-stage Web3 projects. You have been active in crypto since 2013 and were an early investor in platforms like Coinbase, Kraken, and Circle. You are a celebrity VC in the upcoming reality TV series Crypto Nights, premiering on Amazon Prime, where entrepreneurs pitch their projects to a panel of seasoned investors. You see crypto as the beginning of a new era of decentralization, making it your calling to equip the next generation of entrepreneurs with the knowledge, strategy, and support they need to succeed. Your mission is to help as many people as possible develop the mindset and practical tools to exit the failing legacy system and position themselves for a decade of wealth creation and freedom. Kyle, welcome to London Real.
It's quite an intro. Thank you, Brian. Happy to be here.
Look, it's great having you here, Kyle. You and I met, I think, 18 months ago in Singapore, And I could immediately tell you were a dude I needed to know and needed to talk to. You've been a big player in this space in so many different areas and verticals. But I also knew you as the guy that lived in Thailand. Now you're the guy that lives in Austin. And so I guess we'll just kick it off and ask you the obvious. What are you doing back in the US? And what does it feel to be in the US right now with this completely new wave of pro-crypto sentiment from the government, from corporations, mergers, the whole thing? Just what is going on there, Kyle?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, it's a bit of a reverse culture shock. I mean, it's oddly familiar because I spent the first 28 years or whatever of my life living in, actually, no, sorry, it's longer than that, 32 years of my life living in the States. And then I left because of the regulatory environment, because I was a builder in crypto. In fact, the first thing I ever built was a Bitcoin lottery in 2013. And that I even did, protecting myself through when I would broadcast, because I broadcast live on YouTube. It wasn't like a physical lottery. So we actually had the lottery machine with the balls that spin around like you'd see from a state lottery. And I did that out of an apartment in Chicago, but using a VPN, and I was always pseudonymous. You didn't see my face. And I did it through a VPN from Costa Rica because online gambling was legal in Costa Rica. So I've always been, very aware of the regulatory landscape. I saw, what they've done to other people. And really back then, you felt like a freedom fighter, a justice fighter, a disruptor. It's Bitcoin, in the early days. The only people who were into it back then were people who really saw this as something to circumvent centralized control. And if you kind of knew what I knew back then, you knew that the centralized control was not in our best interest. I'm not sure on the audience watching what side of the fence that you sit on, but for me personally, I think what WikiLeaks was doing, was heroic. It was exposing and telling the public the things that are ours to know. The United States belongs to the people. It doesn't belong to the government. And, when we commit crimes or we do things that are not in our best interest, we should know about it. And that was my feeling. So when WikiLeaks wasn't able, when I saw them getting completely shut off from centralized control of payment rails, Venmo, PayPal, Western Union, MoneyGram, banks, Swift, everyone said, Julian Assange, WikiLeaks, you guys cannot accept donations. Of course, they wanted to stop them and arrest them and everything. But then they started accepting Bitcoin, and those payment rails were always open. And that was a game changer for me. So the regulatory environment has always been I've been always super aware of. And as a builder in this space, when I really want to start to build, I stayed here from 2012 when I first entered all the way until early 2018 is when I decided to actually leave, because I really wanted to do more than invest and advise. By that time, I had invested already in Kraken, Ripple, Securitize, Circle, Abra, Coinbase, these things. But I wanted to build. I felt like I wanted to build again. The lottery, I stopped building in 2000. I stopped running it in 2015 because it just wasn't making enough money. And I got another opportunity to be co-founder of a layer one that didn't end up working out. But I wanted to continue to build. And so I left to Thailand. Why Thailand? Because it was a quality of life. At that point, I still didn't need to, I knew I would never need to work again, because I sold a company in 2013, the company I'd started in the longevity space. And we can get into longevity more if you'd like to. It's really important to me. But I sold that company and I bought Bitcoin in 2013. And by 2015, 16, when it hit $1,000, I realized as long as I don't be dumb, I'll never have to really worry about, money again. And so it was a lifestyle choice. I had always imagined on my vision board that when I retire one day, I imagined it being much later in life, that I would retire in Thailand, because I backpacked and loved it. And what I did at that point is I took over a resort in Koh Phangan, Thailand, and shut it down to the public, opened it up to crypto entrepreneurs. I had a bunch of great guests like Didi from the Bitcoin family, Tone Vase, one of the smartest guys in the world I know, Emerson Sparks, the founder of ZK Sync, Alex came by. So it was, for 8 months, I had taken over this resort, invited crypto entrepreneurs, and Bitcoin was the only currency accepted there. And it was just an amazing experience. And then I moved to a bit, then and I was doing the crypto circuit tour heavily from 2017 until COVID. And then every time I've been to a conference, people say, why do you live in Phuket? Why do you live in Thailand? And because I moved to Phuket. And it was really just a quality of life thing. But for networking and things like that, it wasn't there. But I had done the work networking already. I did it constantly from 2017. So let's fast forward to Trump coming and running for office. And, when he made his announcement that he wanted to make America the crypto capital of the world, I was glued. I was glued to the biggest reality show in the world, which currently is still running, which is called The Trump Show, and I was glued. And when David Sachs came on and Bo Hines and we saw Gary Gensler was going to come out. And I just thought, man, this is amazing. And I feel like I'm watching all this great things happening and all the stuff and not to mention all the stuff that I thought was wrong with the United States. I moved away also because I disagreed with a lot of the stuff that was happening for years and years and years. I felt like as long as lobbying was going to be allowed, that we'd always have corruption in Washington. I felt like the deep state was too strong to overcome. I felt like, we were allowing crime and violence and nowhere was safe again. And Thailand, very safe. They don't even do petty crimes over there. The Buddhists have a very karmic reality where, you really don't. So I felt safe. But now with Trump coming in office, we've built, two crowdfunding platforms, one called Commonwealth, which is for very early stage investing, giving you the same access to early stage crypto deals, just like any other VC, but it's for the 99%. So, and then we have Paid Network, which was launched in 2021, currently ranked the number 2 launchpad in the world globally by ROI and other metrics. And that's, and for Paid especially, we've never been open to American business. And America, as you know, is the largest consumer market in the world. And there's a strong demand, even though house shopping in Austin doesn't feel like people here have any clue about crypto. And we'll get into that in a bit, my struggles of adopting back into the American lifestyle. But there is a ton of consumer demand. In fact, I just did a show earlier today where we talked about there's now 50 million United States citizens that hold Bitcoin, and there's only 30 million that hold gold. I mean, that's a clear signal that demand is here. Bitcoin is the new digital gold, and the landscape environment is changing to where now it's just going to accelerate like crazy. So I want to tap into the American market. I want to give my fellow Americans an opportunity to invest in early stage startups. They've historically been late to the party. When you go buy a stock on the secondary market, it's already in the billions of dollars of valuation, and all the early stage investors already made their money, and it leaves the retail as the buyers of those exits for the early stage investors. So I want to see the American landscape change to where we can make more easier entries for startups to do capital formation and fundraising, and for American citizens who are capable of understanding risk and can get into it. And we'll see what that regulatory environment decides to do. But I think the barrier of entry for early stage investing should be dropped a lot. So, my team has met with Bo Hines already in the White House. We had a meeting with the SEC about 3 weeks ago, and I'm here to do that kind of work, to go continue my discussion with the SEC, continue my discussion with Bo Hines, and see where that goes, and to try to open up the businesses that we have legally, compliantly, in a way that can operate within America. And I think that's a phenomenal thing. It's a surreal thing, being in the space for so long and sitting on a Zoom call with the SEC. Like, that was unfathomable a few months ago. Yeah. And now to be sitting on and where they're listening, they're asking good questions, they care, and they're trying to understand, how do we protect the American consumer, but also not hinder innovation? And how do we bring people like Kyle back from foreign countries to domicile the company, employ people here, and build businesses America and make America the crypto capital of the world?
What will you talk to Bo about? I'm just kind of curious. Like, what might that be? Obviously, he's very close to Trump, and he's probably looking after maybe the crypto reserve and things like that. But like, what will be the topics of your conversation with him?
Well, I think so when you look at who was invited to the crypto roundtable at the White House, you had, a lot of legal, you had guys like Sergey Nazarov from Chainlink, you had Brian Armstrong from Coinbase. I believe, I don't remember if Brad Garlinghouse was there, XRP.
Yeah.
You had Bo Hines, you had David Sachs. You have, obviously David Sachs is close with the all-in guys who are, all indirectly or directly investors in crypto companies. But what you see right now being discussed in Congress is a lot of how do we bring TradFi on chain? And that's cool. That's fine. That innovates the existing system. It benefits the 1%. It benefits Wall Street. It benefits institutions, hedge funds, pensions, family offices, all this kind of stuff. But what about people who want to build decentralized technology, right? And with all due respect to Bo and the White House administration, it doesn't seem like they have someone on the team that's looking out for the people who want to disrupt incumbents, right? And that should be allowed to be done and encouraged. I mean, bring your business to America, build a better version of Uber or Airbnb or whatever, right? And let that operate within America and bring those jobs and bring that revenue into America. That's going to happen. Decentralized applications are far more efficient if they can be built in a way that the user feels like it's not a Web3 application. And that's happening. So people say there was a talk, I forget her name. It was at the Digital Asset Summit in New York. But she was just saying that, there's been hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars invested in the crypto industry and we haven't built anything, and basically saying it's like a casino and this and that. And, I think that's crazy to say, because that's like saying before AOL came along, the internet didn't build anything. It needed time to develop the infrastructure that made it usable for people like you and I. It's also like saying AI didn't do anything before ChatGPT. It's also not true, right? It needed time to figure out how does this become useful for, hundreds of millions of people around the world, where they're not burdened by the kind of things that we've been burdened with, who are the crypto early adopters, who are okay with the private phrases and the signing and the slow transactions on Ethereum, these kind of things. So what I'll talk to Bo about essentially would be, I think that, I would like to contribute as much as possible to that discussion on, and I've been there myself, and I truly have a desire to make paid and Commonwealth decentralized. And, and I want that to be done in a way that doesn't hamper our ability to come back to the United States. And so I just want to help and give advice in a way that I can, be supportive, and then also just try to figure out, is there a sort of sandbox that we can operate in so we can come and start offering sooner than we have clarity on what the regulatory landscape looks like, because they're building it now. But I expect that we don't get clarity on the different types of tokens and stuff like that until probably Q3, Q4, something like that. And, we're at all-time highs in Bitcoin. And, I expect that we're going to have an alt season, fairly soon. So, if we really want companies to come back to America and operate here, it needs to be sooner than later. So that's a discussion I'll probably have with them and see where else, they might need some support.
Yeah, you say it right, because they seem very TradFi focused, very institution focused. Obviously, there's a lot of lobbying money coming at them, and was down at Mar-a-Lago before that. I got in there, not mention any names, XRP. But, and so obviously World Liberty Financial, which is kind of Eric and Don Jr., are going after, those bigger players, and they're doing their own stablecoin. But you're right. I don't see much for the little guy. And that's what's really missing in crypto, because this is the protocol where little guys can get in early, as opposed to the American system where it's, accredited investors. And like you said, the structure is where the little guy gets in only to exit, the big VC money. Honestly, crypto is the most American thing because of its freedoms, and yet it's not really encouraged in America. So props to you for making that trip and going back, and for being able to meet with people like Bo and the SEC. You got a great track record, Kyle, that shows that you're probably in it for the right reasons and been in it as an OG. So yeah, I hope all that goes really smooth. How do you think we're doing in DC. Obviously, that Genius Act seems like it's moved on to the House, which I think is good news. Overall, how would you rate how the Trump administration is doing and how Congress is doing and how the SEC is doing in advancing, the blockchain agenda?
How do you get out of a rat race? How do you create wealth not only for yourself, but also for the generations to come after?
I am absolutely amazed with the quality of companies that we're getting exposure to.
We go on to Zoom calls with the innovators and the folks who are building new applications in metaverse, blockchain, artificial intelligence, decentralized finance.
What's going on, everybody? Thumbs up if you can see me.
We are focusing on early stage investment.
And the quality of people that we're getting exposure to, whether it be Dan Tapiero with 1RT, Jason Ma from Open, Yatsu from Animoca.
It's been a phenomenal experience thus far. It has far exceeded my expectations.
We are focusing on cutting edge technologies.
I view it now as the best investment I've ever made. The upside I view is unlimited.
And as a retail investor, I would never get this exposure anywhere else outside of Investment Club.
See you in the Investment Club.
It's a good question, and I'll get back to it in just a second. I want to add one more thing to what I said before. My kind of sense of urgency to kind of move this discussion forward with Washington and the guys at SEC and Bowen, et cetera. So what we do have clarity on from David Sachs is that meme coins are not securities. And when the American market only has a clear signal that you're allowed to buy Bitcoin and meme coins, but not everything else, that creates a problem. Then so the American market can freely go and buy complete vapor trash coins on Pump Fund or this new narrative that kicked off internet capital markets, which is literally just a fancy way of packaging up ICO with a meme coin and trying to pretend that maybe it has utility for a real company one day, which is literally just what my crowdfunding platforms do. But we actually vet, screen, due diligence, KYC, KYB, make sure that this is actually something that value accrual happens back to the investors, and it isn't some completely uncorrelated token that has nothing to do with the business. So I see a huge problem right now with the fact that David Sachs came out saying that meme coins are legal, and platforms like Bonk Fund, Pump Fund, and now Believe app can operate and service Americans when projects like mine can't yet come in and clearly offer things that are less risky than these meme coin casinos. So back to the question of how is Washington doing? I think that they're doing, so I wouldn't disagree that the most important thing right now for the Trump administration to do is to try to find stability in the American, fiscal and monetary policies, and try to, just 6 months ago, I was making lots of shows on how BRICS was accelerating at an alarming pace. There was over 100 countries, I think, that signed up or applied or wanted to be part of what BRICS was doing, and they wanted to make the unit a direct competitor to the US dollar. And so US dollar dominance as a reserve was facing real threats. And I think that the most clear thing why this Genius Act is getting bipartisan support and will likely pass through Congress is because there's over $200 billion of stablecoins printed out there right now that are backing the US government, buying US short-term treasuries and buying US dollars. And it's making access to the US dollar easier and cheaper than ever before. So I understand why it's a priority. I also understand that most of the United States, 99.9%, lives on the TradFi world. And so let's upgrade that TradFi infrastructure. I mean, I bought a car recently here in Austin, and, I don't even want to get into the headache of trying to buy a car when I haven't had, a history of being plugged in the financial world in over a decade in America. They're like, oh, yeah, I'm like, yeah, but look at all this crypto I have. They're like, what is that? I don't care. Show me your bank statements. Like, what is a bank statement? Like, but they, the point is I had to wire money. So I had to go figure out how to get my crypto off of what I've stored it in for years, over a decade, and then figure out, how to get that into my bank, which I do have one US bank. And then I had to wire the money, and that took two and a half days to get over. And I had to do 2 transactions. I couldn't even do, the $80,000 is what I had down payment for the car. So I couldn't even do that in one transaction. And each time I had to pay $30 and wait 2 days for those to clear. It was just astonishing. So yes, let's upgrade TradFi, fine. Sergey is doing a really good job at building infrastructure for interoperability, to bring real world assets on chain, to lower the time of settlement for things like Swift and DTCC. Yeah, fine. Everything like that is great. But I'm missing the discussions about decentralization. I mean, we just don't even hear that word anymore. Not on TV, not from the Trump administration, not from anybody, really. So it comes back to that 2017, 2018 discussion that we used to hear all the time. Blockchain, not crypto, right? And it's like, okay, so you want to bring permissioned private chains into the market so that BlackRock and Citadel can build the Texas Stock Exchange, where they got 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, trading of tokenized real world assets. Great, fine, do that. But I believe, and it's probably limited of knowledge and manpower, that at the same time, if the administration doesn't also focus on how do you bring people building decentralized technology into America and give them a safe space to do so, we're going to miss out on that part of the industry, which is massive.
Yeah, really well said. It's so important, and I'm glad you're pushing it and working on it. How is the administration doing? Are you happy that the Genius Act is moving forward? Are you happy with the Bitcoin Strategic Reserve? Are you happy with what the SEC is doing so far? Or where would you rate some of these efforts?
So I think obviously getting rid of Gary Gensler was a big win. And it's funny because I've watched a couple interviews since then about how was Gary behind the scenes. And actually, Gary, we know that he was a college professor before, pro crypto before the SEC. I think he got into the SEC and was on the wrong side of the aisle, right? He was really trying to lean toward one party and the other party won. And so in doing so, in playing a politician, he lost touch of what he probably truly believed in and became our industry villain. And so getting him out was fantastic. Getting Trump in office was fantastic for our industry. And now getting Paul Atkins, which we haven't seen yet how he's going to rule, but he definitely seems pro-crypto, pro-innovation, and he falls under administration that is clearly deregulated lots of industries in America, deregulating energy, deregulating crypto space for now until we can actually regulate it. But stopping the enforcement, all the regulatory by enforcement actions that were happening before. So I think that we're on the right track. We have the crypto task force and the SEC as well. One of the things that we're looking at exploring is the SEC is working with something called FinHub, which is kind of like a sandbox environment. And, we're trying to see, does it make sense for us to apply to work with FinHub as a company and go into that as in a sandbox-like environment? From what I understand, traditionally regulatory sandboxes limit how much business a company can do. I understand that the FinHub doesn't do that. So, but still, it's not clear yet to us, and we have to have more discussion still to see, is that a good, smart business decision for us to do that, or how do we better wait until we see what kind of regulation comes?
Okay. Now today, literally as we speak, Kyle, we're hitting an all-time high in Bitcoin. By the way, I don't think that's a coincidence. Obviously, there's two powerful people here talking about it. But at the same time, due to as posted as a graph in Twitter by my friend Benjamin Cowan, who runs Into the Cryptoverse, the social interest in crypto is almost at an all-time low. And he plotted it back to 2020. And you can literally see the YouTube searches and the videos and everything peak in 21 when we hit 69K in Bitcoin. Now we're at 109 and it's almost down at zero. So obviously institutions are in. The ETF people are buying. The Saudi funds and the Abu Dhabi funds are buying. World Liberty's in. Bank of America CEO says he's ready to do the stablecoin as soon as Genius passes. And yet retail is at an all-time low. And you even said anecdotally, people in Austin don't know what crypto is. What is going on here? And is this potentially good news? Because it means when they do come on, we're going to have a crazy bull run.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. And I think that what happened here is, I think that we haven't had an alt season yet. We had many bull runs within very specific niches over the past year and a half or so. And what happened was it was a massive value extracting experiment. And, we had meme coin runs, we had, these AI agent runs, and meme coins for sure, largely 99.99% are garbage. I will say that it's a free market. And I believe that true builders who want to build community, who want to build IP, who want to turn that into a brand, I think that they have every right to do so. And so I'm completely open and in fact support a couple that are doing that. But large in part, it was value extracting. Companies like Pump Fund were making crazy money. We had billions and billions and billions and billions of dollars, tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars trading through the meme coin space. And everyone was promising and looking to get rich quick. And so retail did come back for a second. Before we had that little blow off top in that market, we had the Coinbase app and the Phantom app on Solana for Solana, climbing through the App Store ranking. And for a second there, they were at the top. And that's why we had this blow off top there. What happened is all those people lost money. And all the people like Hayden Davis, who started the Argentina coin, Melania coin, maximum value extracting, stole over $100 million from people. I believe that even though we've stopped going after crypto companies, we need to go after people like that who are just literally taking retail's money, putting it in their pocket shamelessly. I just did an interview with the New York Post. It went out last Sunday about influencers who shamelessly, this guy from Dubai, shameless, just, I create pump and dumps and I've done over 100 and I made millions of dollars from it, and just completely shameless about it. So I think what happened is we did have retail come back for a minute there, right? I did get, you probably feel it too. I did get a lot of views on my YouTube videos when I was doing that, right? And now I'm at about, a quarter or a third of what I was doing back at that point. So retail did come back, but they got burnt and they're pissed and they're upset and they stopped watching our channels. They stopped participating. They went back to their old life, right? And most of these guys weren't investors before. They were teens on TikTok and they were whatever, people in the trenches hanging out, trying to get rich quick. People like that kid, who did the rug pull, that token that was famous. That was, so we got completely burnt. The retail got completely burnt. And I think that they had PTSD still. And so but this new all-time high, I believe that over the next, this is going to make news today, obviously. It's going to get attention to people, obviously, and they're going to come back cautiously. I think, though, to your point, this is also why it's so important for me to be in America right now, because I'm looking for a new audience to participate in things like Paid and Commonwealth. People who aren't looking to get rich overnight, but want to allocate a small portion of what they make every month into making a better future for themselves by investing what they can't afford to lose into solid potential companies that could be the next Coinbase and Kraken and Ripple, and Securitize and Circle. The things that I invested into 7-8 years ago, only one of them has gone public so far. That was Coinbase, but I expect Ripple to go public. I expect Kraken to go public. So I know Circle's considering being acquired or going public. So finally, 8 years later, but these investments I made 7-8 years ago are finally coming to fruition. And probably if I had just maintained a 9-to-5 job between then and now, that probably would have retired me. And the 7 to 8 year time horizon is fantastic for people looking to make a financial massive shift in their life, retire essentially, if you will, rather than working a 9-to-5 and spending your money on Starbucks and other junk, invested it in quality things. So I think, so that's why I think it's important for America to open up, because America has been, in a way, protected from a lot of this is happening. And I didn't realize how walled off America was until I came back here and moved here. Like, it is crazy. These people who own these houses, they know nothing about it. I can show them. I'm very crypto rich, very cash poor. And they're just looking at me like, I don't know if I'm gonna let you in my house. I'm gonna let you rent it. I don't know if you can make the rent payments. It's like, yeah, but I showed you my aggregate, my wallets. But they're like, well, but isn't crypto volatile? But yeah, but like, look, there's still 10 years of rent in stablecoin. It's, what is a stablecoin? It's crazy. So this whole market, I gave you the stat earlier, 50 million Americans own Bitcoin. But how many of them have looked into what's beyond Bitcoin, right? And I know that you probably had the same experience. I had the same experience. Everyone who comes in has the same experience. First, we're introduced to Bitcoin, usually. Although I'll tell you, in America, most people have XRP over Bitcoin, which is crazy. But there's a lot, so that they have to go through that learning curve, and then first they have to get comfortable and familiar with what is Bitcoin, and then they have to understand what are smart contracts, and that's a whole nother mind-blowing experiment.
Yeah, it's quite an education. We run a crypto and DeFi academy, so I'm constantly walking people through that, and yeah, we forget how much of a mind-blowing concept it is for someone that's new. Also, you're in Austin, which is quite the forward-thinking capital, right? A lot of tech bros have moved there from Cali. And so I'm surprised that you still find that the people you meet don't know that much about crypto. But then again, maybe that's just the state of the US right now.
Right. Well, they call Austin the Silicon Hills. It's, it's definitely like you've got Tesla, you got a bunch of companies have moved here. You've got, a lot of content creators. You got, I think, Mark Moss, Alex Jones. You've got J. Cal,
Rogan,
Joe Rogan, Andre Marcus. These guys, they're all here. They all obviously know about this stuff. I think what I'm encountering right now is I'm looking to lease a luxury home, and this is usually old money, right? And so that's been my experience for the past 3 weeks of being here, is constantly every day trying to find a place to call home for the next 12 months at least. And that's who I've been dealing with. So I have a feeling, though, that when I get plugged in, some friends introduced me something called ATX DAO, which is just Austin, decentralized crypto community. So I think when I get plugged in more and start doing networking and can, put aside the house hunting and actually settle down, I think that I'll start to experience that side of Austin more. I haven't really got to taste that yet.
Kyle, you mentioned that the alt season will be coming. About 10 days ago, I was at the Global Family Office Summit in Dubai, and I sat at a table with someone, and they leaned over me and said, "I don't think there will be an alt season." And I looked at them. They've been in the market for quite a few years. And I looked at them. First time I heard anybody say that. Of course, my stomach dropped because I think you and I both have a lot of, pre-sale tokens in really good utility companies. I think we really look at the stuff that I believe is going to be the future Google or Amazon of the Web3 space. But when you hear something like that, you think, wow, is that true? What do you say to someone who says that?
Well, I definitely don't think that's true. I think that it's going to be a potentially more difficult alt season than we've ever had before, because altcoins largely, almost entirely, are narrative driven. Not always. Like when, for paid network, for example, if you have an alt season and if these launches are doing well, then we have true demand for the token, which drives that up. But large in part, it's driven by narrative. And now we have these platforms that allow anyone to create a token with just a tweet, and it is and you hear these stories of people who buy into these things at stupid low valuations, and they run up and then they post screenshots of their gains, and then people think that that's realistic. And then but the guys who build the picks and shovels are the ones actually making all the money. It's the picks and shovels and the guys who maliciously create these tokens that are actually winning right now and extracting the money that should, in my opinion, be going to good utility projects. And so it'll be more difficult. But I think that what happens is people learn their lessons, and when you get burnt enough time, and if you play the meme coin casino, inevitably you will get burnt enough times, you will get tired of that and you might leave for a while, which we've seen now. But then you might come back and you realize, okay, I need to be paying attention elsewhere. I need to be investing in the future behemoths because I see what's happening on the news. I see what's happening on a geopolitical landscape. I see that these technologies are being used. I mean, BlackRock is building on Ethereum. They have the Biddle fund, and they've got, Chainlink integrating with real companies. And so when you see, and you see the Trumps promoting Ethereum, for example, the ETF, if they start allowing the staking to happen in the ETFs, now you have potentially people like Vanguard who might come in because, the Vanguard CEO says, we don't invest and we don't buy things that don't earn us passive yield. But if you can stake your ETH and earn passive yield, maybe Vanguard comes into the ETH ETFs. But inevitably, I believe it's going to happen. And what might make the saying, a rising tide lifts all ships, is there's probably more liquidity coming into the market than ever before. And so even though we have an attention game fight like never before, we probably see more liquidity coming into things never before. And a lot of people, and this is why I think the American audience is so important for this, is because they're going to come in and a lot of them are going to look for good quality companies to invest into, right? And they're going to understand this is the next internet revolution. This is the next AI revolution where money will be made and generational wealth will be created. And, for Bitcoin, that's your store of value. That's how you preserve your purchasing power. That's how you protect it from the inflationary and the de-dollarization that's happening. That's how you protect it from the housing collapse that's probably going to come, or at least has currently stalled out over the last 2 years and likely will probably correct. So where else are you buying right now? Well, if you want to preserve your wealth, you put it in Bitcoin. If you want to try to change your generational wealth opportunity, you have to invest in something a little higher up the risk curve. And that's going to be altcoins. And so I think as we see more capital coming into Bitcoin, which is relentless right now, relentless bids on Bitcoin, as people start to take profits, they will rotate into Ethereum, because a lot of people believe in watching charts and cycles. And people are going, if they're going to bet on something that historically has happened every single bull run, or they're going to possibly try to play their odds that a different outcome might happen this cycle, well, they're betting against odds that are not in their favor. And so my guess is that people who are placing bets are going to bet that the same thing happens this cycle historically has always happened in crypto. And that is a rotation of capital. And this is exactly what happens. It goes from Bitcoin and then it rotates into Ethereum. And so the second that we start to see Ethereum rallying, which everyone thinks it's dead, but it's not. Like if you want to build a company or an RWA play or anything with billions and billions and billions of dollars, and your reputation from a Fortune 500 company is put on the line, you're probably not going to build on Solana because it just hasn't been battle tested like Ethereum has. And TradFi is totally okay waiting 12 seconds for a transaction to clear, as long as they're not going to get fired or they're not going to get crucified by the media for building on something more experimental like Sui or something, or Solana. And there's places for those too, right? Like I think that those blockchains are fantastic for lower value transactions, things like gaming, things like social media, things like streaming, whatever. Those blockchains will be cheap and fast. They're less battle tested, and those are the blockchains I believe that a lot of consumer apps will be built on. Right? If we want to build a social media platform and you want to build tipping built into it, you're not going to do it on Ethereum. You're probably not going to do it on Ethereum layer 2 because it's still slower and cheaper and not as nice of your experience. You're going to do it on Sui, you're going to do it on Solana, something like that. And and that's where we're headed in the future, where I believe big companies that want to put assets on chain will probably do it on Ethereum or Ethereum layer 2s, and consumer facing apps that want to be cheap, fast, and lower value transactions. That's going to happen on Solana and Sui. So to your point, I think that we're going to have an altcoin season. I think it's inevitable. And if you look at historically where we are in the markets, we're in May right now. In 2021 cycle, we had a bit of an exciting Q1, and then we went real boring all the way all summer, which is the opposite of what's happening right now. We had a really bad Q1 this year, and now we're at all-time highs today, and we're coming into the summer. So it's a bit different. For me, I think that if anything, what happens is this just gets pushed out a little bit because of what's happened on a regulatory framework and because of institutions coming in and governments. It's pretty massive. So I think that we're going to have an altcoin season. I think that it's maybe delayed a little bit. It does seem to be replicating kind of what we saw in 2021 in a way, where we had the first kind of blow off top. Bitcoin hit 108,000, and before in the last cycle, it hit like 64,000 or something. And then we had this dip all the way until Q4, when you had this crazy mania that came in for a few months, blow off top at 69K in correction. I don't know, but that seems to be kind of what's happening here. We hit this time, it was shifted because of the ETFs, because of Trump. So we saw all-time highs early, correction. Now we see all-time highs again. I think that will keep running. And we're already starting to see altcoins out, like some of them starting to do really, really well right now. Some of the good ones are performing really well.
Yeah, and Ethereum was up 50% in 7 days. We saw
more than Bitcoin.
A bunch of things coming back, which was pretty impressive. If you had to call a quarter for the Bitcoin high, I'm sorry to do this to you, but I have to do this, Kyle. And if you had to call a level plus or minus 20%, what would it be?
This is so hard because I asked the same question to so many people that
To continue watching the rest of the episode for free, visit our website londonreal.tv or click the link in the description below.
Hey, I know investing in crypto is scary. It takes a real leap of faith because there are so many scams, rug pulls, and bad actors out there. It's a dangerous business, which is why 95% of people lose all their money. Well, that's why I created the London Real Investment Club, so you can access the hottest deals on the planet and use the crypto bull market to create the generational wealth that you deserve. Join my team of over 100 people from around the world that are making millions of dollars behind the scenes investing in blockchain, AI, Web3 games, DeFi, Bitcoin, and more. Don't miss out. Click the link below to book a call with one of my team now. But hurry, this bull market will end soon.
I know investing in crypto can be scary. That's why you gotta join the investment club. Pull the trigger. Let's do this.